Welcome to the Man Cave Podcast with Dan Casper.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to this episode of the Man Cave Podcast, brought to you by our good friends from Toyson Ford and Hy-Vee. We've got the Swag Cave, brought to you by Resonance Branding Company. Big thanks for tuning in to this episode. Quick reminder, don't forget to follow and subscribe to the podcast for free. But if you got a few seconds, if you could, give us a 5-star rating and a positive review so others can find the podcast. Wherever. We're all over, I should say. We're on Apple, Spotify, even on YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel because we've got some new content coming up over there. This episode of the podcast, we're going to talk some Brewers with Brandon Berg. We're going to talk about Christian Yelich's injury. We're about 3/4 of the way through the season and such, so plenty of Brewers talk coming up in the second half. But I want to lead off the podcast talking about preseason game number 2 for the Packers. Who are we watching? What are we watching in this second Packers preseason game coming up on Sunday? Now, I'm sure it's probably going to be a lot of the same ones from the first game, but we know we're not going to see, Jordan Love and some of the starters and such because they've got joint practices and they're like Matt LaFleur believes you get a little bit more out of that, or the starters at least will get a little bit more out of that. So when I look at this second game, this preseason game, the players or the position groups that I'm going to be watching for, obviously you're looking at still the kicking situation. So as many field goals as possible from long distance, from weird distance, whatever, I don't care. I want to see a lot of field goals in this thing because for crying out loud, we need a leader. We need somebody to lead this race because it's clear that they don't have somebody that's ahead in this whole thing. Joseph, Anders, Holt, whoever, okay? Figure it out. Figure it out who the kicker's going to be. So if we get a game where they're going to be, it's just a field goal fest, I'm okay. Because you got to figure this thing out. But besides the kicking situation, you're still looking at offensive line. You're still looking at maybe the depth there, especially on the outside, tackle-wise. Andre Dillard, I think, is going to be, he was okay in the first game, but you're looking at depth, maybe, a Caleb Jones or Telford or whoever else is going to kind of step up and be those backup left tackles because I think it's pretty obvious that the Packers have better depth at the interior offensive line, at that interior spot. So who is going to be those backup tackle options? Who's going to step up and kind of run away with that? I'll be curious to see Jordan Morgan in this game and if he gets any reps at tackle. If he gets any reps at left tackle or right tackle. Because I think now, and he's still competing. I mean, in the updated depth chart, again, I know the depth charts aren't the gospel or anything like that. But he is listed as a co-starter at right guard with Sean Ryan. At least that was the last one that I just saw a couple days ago. So he's still competing for that. But I would like to still see him get some work in at a tackle position, just so we know, if it comes, because chances are a tackle's going to get hurt this year and maybe miss some of the games or miss a game or so. So I'd like to see Morgan get some of that work in. How does he look? Left tackle and right tackle. And everybody else out there, too, that's going to be in competition for that spot. Another position group that I'm personally going to be kind of paying attention to here a little bit more is, again, the back end of the wide receivers. I think there are 4 clear-cut locks in this group. Watson, Dobbs, Reed, and Wicks. They're locks in this room. Assuming, let's just split the difference here. Let's say they keep 6. Let's say they keep 6 wide receivers. Who are going to be those final 2? Is it going to be Bo Melton? Can Bo Melton go out there and have himself a bounce-back game? Because he had a couple drops in that first game. And if you're fighting for a roster spot, you need to have a bounce-back game after that. Is it going to be Malik Heath? Now, Malik Heath is a guy that, they obviously love, and I like Malik Heath too, and he does he's probably one of their best, if not their best blocker in terms of the wide receiving department there. But is he going to have an opportunity to maybe make a few plays in the passing game and in the catching department? Is Grant DuBose going to have another game like he did against Cleveland with a few catches, nice sideline catch, a little toe tap over there? Is he going to continue to stack success? He's been having a good camp. If he has another good game here, I mean, he might be one of those guys that's going to nail down those final 2 spots. Toure is running out of time, I think, right now. Honestly, if I were to rank these 4 power rankings wise, I think Grant is probably number 1. It's very close between Malik Heath and Bo Melton, in my opinion. But maybe Bo Melton, even with that game that he had against Cleveland with a couple drops, maybe he's a slightly ahead of Malik Heath because of what he did last year towards the end of the regular season. And I think it's Toure is the 4th one. Toure needs to have a couple of really good games coming up here, because I don't see this team carrying 7 wide receivers. Could be completely wrong because they've done it before in the past. But I don't see them carrying 7. So if we've got 4 locks and only 2 spots open, who are going to be the 2 receivers that separate themselves and win those jobs? I think it's going to be kind of curious, too, to watch Clifford and Pratt. I don't think the Packers will open up with Pratt as their. I should say that because Clifford was the backup last year, but I don't think they would move on from Sean Clifford. But Pratt's pushing. Michael Pratt's pushing it a little bit. Maybe, we saw Clifford the majority of the time in that Cleveland game. But maybe we might see a little bit more of Michael Pratt. So if you're all up into the backup quarterback situations and such, it might be kind of interesting to watch these two. And if Michael Pratt goes out there and just balls out and maybe gets a little bit more of an opportunity, it might be kind of interesting to see that Baltimore game. Could Michael Pratt actually push for being the primary backup, a rookie, behind Jordan Love? I remember Sean Clifford was the talk for a lot of fans last year. Put Sean Clifford in over Jordan Love. But Michael Pratt right now, even in practice, was kind of maybe pushing for snaps ahead of Sean Clifford and such. And there's other, you're looking at running backs now with no Lloyd. Does Emmanuel Wilson continue, to preseason's his season, it seems like. Does he continue to have another good game? I honestly don't know how much, again, we're going to see of A.J. Dillon. I know that's probably a player that a lot of people are going to want to see, and they're going to want to see him perform better in his limited snaps than what he did against Cleveland. The thing is just I don't know how much we're going to see of him, how many snaps we're going to see of him. I don't see A.J. Dillon as a guy that they're going to throw out there and play half the game, play 2 quarters. I think you're going to see him for a few snaps, maybe a quarter or so. But I think A.J. Dillon is looked upon in a more positive light within the building, within the coaches' staff than what maybe some fans have right now. I think he's got a lot more positivity. He's got a lot more. He's just. I think the coaching staff trusts him, and they like him a lot more than maybe what some of the fans' perception is of him right now. So I know a lot of fans are probably going to say, I want to see A.J. Dillon more, and I want to see him get better. I honestly don't know if we're going to see him a whole lot in this game. But I hear you. I understand it. You'd probably, that Cleveland game, a little bit of a bad taste in your mouth. Probably want to have a nice little bounce-back game. I don't know what the chances are of that, and I don't know how many opportunities he's going to get. But Lloyd missing this, Marshawn Lloyd missing this game and maybe potentially even next week, it's huge. I mean, you're hoping for that guy maybe to compete for the backup spot and maybe be the primary backup running back, typical running back to Jacobs. But this opens the door, I think, for a guy like Emmanuel Wilson to get a spot again, to win a roster spot again. And then I think, if we're looking at more, keep paying attention, keep watching those rookie safeties, Bullard, Williams, Anthony Johnson Jr. Those guys have been having, from all accounts, a really solid camp, a really good camp. So I want to see those guys continue to get better and see them in action more. Again, we're not going to see a whole lot of scheming, if any. It's going to be a lot of vanilla stuff. So you're not going to see any unique packages with those guys or anything like that. However, we can tell when a guy makes a play. We can tell when a guy makes a good play. You're looking at, okay, making some solid tackles, doing this, assignments, staying in your lanes, all that sort of stuff. We can tell that by watching the tube, right? We all can. Are they going to continue to do that? You're looking at the back end of the quarters. Kalen King, is he going to push for a roster spot? He's been getting some second team snaps at that nickel spot in practice. I mean, they're looking at Matt LaFleur the other day, just kind of singing his praises too. I think Kalen King's got a real shot to make this ball club, even though he's a 7th-round pick. But maybe even see some playing time this year. It's one thing to make the ball club, but it's another thing to actually get playing time. You got those inactive lists, right? I mean, sometimes teams hold on to guys, but you don't see them at all. They're on the inactive list. Cox was one example of that last year for the Packers, defensive end. But I want to see Kalen King, number 34, because I think you look at the corner group, and in the past, maybe you keep 6 corners, 7 corners, but with the versatility that these safeties bring, maybe you keep 5, because a couple of your safeties can play as a nickel corner or as a slot corner, or play a little corner. Maybe with the versatility of those safeties, it allows yourself to maybe only carry 5 corners. So if that's the case, it's Jair, it's Stokes, it's Keyshawn, it's Carrington Valentine. If there's only one spot open, is that Corey Valentine? Is that Kalen King? So that's going to be interesting. But also, too, going back to that corner and safety spot, last couple years, you've had guys making the team because of their special teams play, because of the coverage that they are able to provide on special teams. Now, punting is still the same, but with kickoffs, with the whole rule here, I'm really curious to see, not just for Green Bay, but maybe across the league, how do teams kind of build their rosters? How do teams build their special teams rosters now? Because we've always heard, one of the phrases, hey, best way for those bottom end roster guys to get on a team, play special teams. If you could play special teams and you're a bottom roster guy, that's the way to get on the field. That's the way to make a team. But with the kickoff rule, a little bit different. Does it still put a premium on it? I think it still kind of does, because you want to kick it in that zone and you're trying to get down there to tackle the guy. But also at the same time, you don't want him to have a very good starting field position. We saw that, and that was highlighted in the first game. I mean, you kick it in that landing zone, but you get a guy that has a decent return, you're all of a sudden just maybe 10, 15 yards away from being in field goal position. So that puts a little bit more extra pressure on your defense. So maybe you want those special teams guys that can just fly on down there and make a play. So I'll be curious to see, does anybody kind of stand out special teams-wise, coverage-wise? And does that help propel them up into the depth chart of maybe making this team? Because really that hasn't been something we've heard a whole lot about yet. Last couple of years, you've had guys that were brought in specifically, it seemed like, for special teams. Rudy Ford, when he was first brought in, was specifically for special teams. Then he kind of developed, got some playing time at safety and such. Remember Levitt? Same thing. Safety. So haven't really kind of heard too much about that this year. So these younger guys, these bottom end, whether they're wide receivers, corners, rookie safeties, can they make some plays in the special teams department? Who's going to stand out in terms of the coverage unit? That's something else to kind of keep tabs on. Linebackers, that sort of thing. Like a Hopper, rookie linebacker. All right, let's take a quick break, and we're going to talk some Brewers with Brandon Berg coming up after these quick messages. Get ready for football season with Hy-Vee. Whether you're tailgating at the game or having a party at your home, Hy-Vee has all the essentials you need for game day. From meats to put on the grills to snacks and beverages, including their huge wine and spirits department, Hy-Vee is your tailgating headquarters. And don't forget to check out their sports shop too, where you can get some swag to help cheer on your favorite team, including the local high schools. It's football season. Score a touchdown with all of your football needs with Hy-Vee in Oklahoma.
I'm Victoria Cash, and I want to invite you to a place called Lucky Land, where you can play over 100 social casino-style games for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. So what are you waiting for? The best way to discover your luck is to spin. So go to LuckyLandSlots.com, that's LuckyLandSlots.com, and get lucky today. At Lucky Land.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Claire. We're getting set for another busy travel season, vacations, taking our kids to all their games and activities, and you need a proper vehicle to get you to where you're going, and safely. That's where Toyson Ford can help you. Toyson Ford will go the extra mile to provide you with compelling options for new and used car shopping. They will gladly work with you on financing no matter what your budget may be. They're committed to giving drivers across the Chippewa Valley the best in customer service. Check them out for yourself. Visit Toyson Ford in Chippewa Falls today and check out their website, toysonford.net. Brandon Berg is joining me right now, and let's talk a little Christian Yelich first. Obviously, the plan didn't go to what they were hoping for, a couple weeks ago, that he wasn't going to do surgery, he was going to rest it and see what happens, and then obviously wasn't working out, so he's undergoing season-ending surgery, and for anybody wondering, could he come back for the postseason, I wouldn't.
No, that ship has sailed.
Yeah, so that's more than likely not going to be a possibility, especially as you heard from Dr. Crow a little bit earlier. Back surgery is a little tricky, and you'd want to try to avoid having those type of surgeries. But I mean, it sucks, right? I mean, he was an all-star. He was having an all-star season. You're missing a guy who's hitting over 300, and his OPS, I believe, was over 800 off the top of my head. I mean, this was a guy that was kind of giving you flashbacks of 18-19. So missing him in this lineup, Let's call it what it is. It stinks. It sucks.
Right. The team is worse without having him out there. Mm-hmm. So, and that's just kind of. I think when it was first announced, this is kind of what I expected.
Yeah.
I didn't think the idea of he'd be able to kind of rest and rehab it, and it just seemed like they were too far down that road.
Yeah.
So hopefully this can help just maintenance going forward. I think there's going to be a fair amount of maintenance, kind of like the later years of Ryan Braun, where you would get those maintenance days. Now, obviously, that's a little bit easier because you can get a maintenance day and just DH for a while.
Mm-hmm.
But, this is just something that they're going to have to be very aware of because he still has, I think, 4 or 5 years left on his contract after this, so he's not going anywhere.
Right.
So it's just something that they're going to have to work through.
Right. So maybe it's a good thing now we always say about it they got a lot of depth at this position, whether it's like football, basketball, baseball.
It's funny how it always ends up kind of working itself out.
Exactly. Even with them trading Joey Weimer, I mean, Jackson Cheerio has really stepped up, and I mean, that's going to be interesting, isn't it? Like when Christian Yelich comes back, not to look too far, but if his best position is left field.
I think you're just ultimately going to get a lot of Christian Yelich DHing.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of a bit like they did this year because I'd have to look at the breakdown, but he definitely DH'd more than he played the outfield. So
okay,
I think there's a way to work that.
Yeah,
but that's
because would you agree? Is that Cheerio kind of his best spot right now? Is
probably
left field?
Oh, my mistake. I mean, Yelich played 74 games, trying to do math in my head, and he had 48 in left field and 26 at DH. So
okay.
I mean,
about 2-to-1-ish, almost.
Yeah,
2
but
to 1,
I think that could go up more.
Right.
Next year, obviously. But no, I would probably say, Cheerio has, left field is probably. I mean, he hasn't played any center field, even though he did in the minors, but mostly because I think at this point you have, you had other superior center fielders on the roster with Blake Perkins, who's now on the injured list, but then and Garrett Mitchell and Sal Frelick.
Right.
I think that's mostly been Garrett Mitchell's spot right now, given that they have just those three that they're kind of working through.
Could you see a really good scenario where this is the three for the next few years in that spot?
Possible, yeah, for sure. I do think that ultimately still Blake Perkins is best. Is just kind of like that backup guy that comes in late for a defensive sub, but also gets a couple starts a week. But I think they would like it to be
right.
They each bring out something a little bit different to the table, and this is really their first chance to kind of run for all of them to run with it.
Right. So I mean, way too early to be discussing maybe what career wise. Nobody knows this. Anybody can sit there and say it's a career ender, but. We'll get to that point.
Yeah, we
once
don't know.
We don't know. We don't know.
Obviously, modern science has come a long way, but
right.
we'll see how far.
It for this point in time, it stinks.
Yep.
It sucks. So it puts a little bit more pressure on the young guys to kind of fill it,
and everybody else just in general.
Right. Pitching staff, I would say.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's got to step it up a little bit.
Even your veterans like Adames and Contreras.
Yep.
Everyone's just
Hoskins.
Everyone's just got a little bit more on their plate.
Right. But I will say this. And it's still, I mean, it looks like they're 9 games ahead. Don't want to put the horse in front of the cart or anything like that. But
cart before the horse.
Cart before
the horse. Always goes in front of the cart.
Right.
Otherwise, the cart's not going to pull the horse.
You're right. You're right. Thank you for correcting that. But looking at this, if they make the postseason, which I think they will, how the heck, when you lose Christian Yelich, who was having an all-star season, you miss him for the second half. You've missed Devin Williams the first half. You get traded Corbin Burns, a week before spring training. Brandon Woodruff we knew wasn't going to pitch this year. Wade Miley got hurt. If anybody else votes for Pat Murphy for Manager of the Year, should get their vote taken away. For all that stuff to have happened. And they even finish 8-9 games ahead in first place.
Yeah. Well, first of all, the Brewers are a game and a half out of the top spot in the National League.
Right.
Now, granted, they're not going to win either of those tiebreakers if it comes down to it with the Phillies. Well, I think they play the Phillies one more time. But they would have to sweep. They would have to sweep that series to pull even. So, assuming that does not happen, they would have to outright beat those teams. But they're a game and a half back. So,
and that NL West race is
the Dodgers have got some heat. Got some heat on their feet right now between the Padres and the Diamondbacks catching up. They're both within a couple games, so and they're playing very well. So, and you don't like to do the whole moral victories thing, but just think back to middle of January.
Yeah.
Someone told you, hey, by the beginning of August, the Brewers are going to trade Corbin Burns. Devin Williams is going to miss the first half of the year. Christian Yelich is going to miss the second half of the year.
And he was vintage Yelich, sort of thing. The numbers.
Knowing kind of what we expected, a lot of people expect out of this team at the start of the year, how would you expect that season to go? Probably not great.
Willie Adames might have been traded.
One of us did predict that.
Yeah, me.
And even I had them as 10 games over 500. Right now they are 17.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing, and I know we are talking a lot about Pat Murphy and the credit, and rightfully so. But it's he would probably be the first one to tell you it's the players, it's not him. But he does deserve some credit for this, I would think. The coaching staff deserves some of the credit for this thing. I mean, it just seems like it's a huge collective unit here.
Yeah, the front office for identifying people that can make that could make a difference. Getting the Corbin Burns trade. I mean, right off the bat, people looked at Joey Ortiz and thought he was just kind of like a defensive first guy that really couldn't hit. Well, he's shown his chops for being a capable major leaguer. D.L. Hall had it was encouraging his first start back. He's going to be back with the team. I think right now it's just kind of a numbers game with where they are in the schedule.
Right.
Rhys Hoskins, he's doing what you expect him to do. He's hitting home runs. He's being a veteran presence. I know some of his, if you try to look at advanced numbers like WAR or something, it's never going to be too glowing for him just because of the defense. He's just flat out not a good defender. That's why Jake Bauers. Ideally, when they need someone at first base to pick it, it's Jake Bauers. But even someone like Jake Bauers, who he's been fine. I had very low expectations for him coming into this year because he really hasn't hit consistently in the major leagues ever. This is his best year in the majors right now. But to see what some of these other people are bringing to the table, Gary Sanchez has been, what you expect out of that backup Eric Haas has hung around because, in his limited opportunities he's had.
Mm-hmm.
They're in a spot right now where they can keep 3 catchers. Is that going to be the case the rest of the year? I'm not sure. But right now, it works.
Mm-hmm.
So, being able to discover a guy like a Tobias Myers, who's on his 3rd or 4th different team already.
Right.
Early on, identifying Colin Ray as someone like, hey, we need to bring this guy back.
Mm-hmm.
What he's been able to do, even work, and another thing, even at the start of the year, even able to say, Freddie Peralta's, it hasn't been, it
hasn't been lived up to the expectations, right?
Yeah, I think that's probably fair.
Mm-hmm.
Given what he has done in previous years.
Mm-hmm. Right, and now getting the ace status attached to him.
Right.
So.
Which I would like to know what Matt LaFleur thinks about an ace pitcher.
Right. So,
but yeah, to hear all of that and to realize, and part of this is that, look, the NL Central has not been very good outside the Brewers.
Mm-hmm.
The Cardinals have really struggled lately. Now suddenly the Reds are tied for second.
Yeah, every team is below 500 besides the Brewers right now.
Yes, so that's part of it. That's part of it.
Mm-hmm.
But you still got to beat the teams you play.
Right. We'll talk more Brewers. We're going to get shot clock coming up here. So, because I want to talk about Willie Adames. I want to talk a little bit more about him, and then a little bit more about the pitching staff coming up here. And then, of course, the series, which this is, to me, is a fun series coming up because they're like 2 very similar teams in a lot of ways.
Right. And you're right. Cleveland's excellent right now. This might be your 2 manager of the years this weekend. I think in the American League, there's very little doubt it's going to be Stephen Vogt.
Right. Yep. I would agree. And former Brewer, Stephen Vogt, too.
Yes.
So, fan favorite, I would say, too. Kind of.
Yeah, he wasn't there very long, but in that he was that way when he played in Oakland and stuff like that too. He's just he was one of those guys that even when he was a player, you knew okay, if he wants to be a manager, he's going to be able to, just because of the way he works with people and his knowledge for the game, and obviously that's translated this year with Cleveland.
Mm-hmm. I want to talk about Willie Adames quick. It just seems like he's kind of the glue guy. I know he's the Gatorade guy right now and such, but we talk about the youth of this team and all that, but it's like, has he really, do you think, become the leader of this team more so than anybody else?
Yep.
Yeah.
I think he's kind of the lightning rod, and you see it his play has been good. The trade they made for him in 2021 is going to kind of go down as kind of one of the more under the radar ones because it happened during the year, but. You look at his numbers right now, starting today, hitting 251, 331 on base percentage, 21 home runs, 13 steals, driven in 81.
Mm-hmm.
He's already got more RBIs this year than he did all last year, and obviously last year was a struggle for him. And look, I gave him a lot of credit because it's a walk year for him, and he's picking a good time to have his best year.
Yeah.
Even with there has been some kind of slip ups here defensively, but you just watch him and he's just. As a leader, he's just in the middle of everything, and I think you can see that. You don't have to watch this team very much to see that. For those younger guys, there aren't a ton of veterans that you can kind of talk to and kind of learn the lay of land. I think that's why bringing in Rhys Hoskins was so important. And certainly, guys like Eric Haas and Gary Sanchez have been around, but for a guy like this that does it and it really is in the spotlight for the Brewers too.
Mm-hmm.
I think you can tell. And look, I think, too, for some of those younger guys, especially I think Jackson Churio, kind of being a Latin American influence, too, I think that just helps with comfort.
Right.
So, being able, William Contreras, too, but just in some ways you almost look at him like they're kind of Churio's big brother.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a great point. So, my next question is that enough to try to re-sign him? Now, the thing I thought is, could they do something? Where I go back to CC and Prince, where they offered him a contract, it was like $20 million a year, I think it was, or something like that. And, they threw it out there. Obviously, they left for more money and such. I almost feel like it's almost to that point, so a little bit. I don't know what it's going to cost.
I don't either, because if you look at recent shortstops that have hit free agency around the same time as Willie Adames, they've all gotten paid. Dansby Swanson a few years ago with the Cubs. What's his name with the Red Sox? Trevor Story.
Oh, yeah.
Trevor Story with the... Then there's other examples, too. They've gotten good money. I'm talking about, mid 100 million, 150, 100, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
The irony is, if you look at the guys that did that, not a lot of them have actually been playing very well, right now. No, that doesn't mean anything about Adames because he's different from them as far as each person's different, each player's different. The Brewers are going to make an offer, And if they get the feeling he's out the door, they will make sure to let everybody know they made an offer, because the last thing they want to do is kind of have an egg on their face and lose kind of the court of public opinion and saying, oh, well, they never really offered him anything.
Right.
They're going to say they offered. I'm sure they're going to say, hey, we offered him a competitive deal. They're going to give him the qualifying offer, which, for those that don't know, is for a pending free agent. It's like a 1-year contract, essentially, like around like $21 million. Mm-hmm. You do it because if you offer a qualifying offer and somebody rejects it, then you get a draft pick.
Draft pick. Yep.
So they'll do. And look, I'm sure if he accepted that, they'd be fine with that.
Mm-hmm.
But they're going to do that just so, if nothing else, you can try to recoup a little bit with the draft pick.
Right.
That will come with it. But I think there's interest both sides. That I think Willie Adames would like to stay, but this is his chance to cash in.
This is his chance to get his contract.
Yeah, this is a chance to get that. Obviously he's already made a good amount of money, but like that, like I'm set for the rest of my life, and my family is in good graces to money.
Right.
And a player is always, especially with their agent here, is always going to be looking for that.
Right.
Now, can they find some middle ground where I don't know.
Right.
It's going to be one of those things like Willie Adames wants to stay in Milwaukee. Well, how bad? Like the Brewers want him to stay in Milwaukee. How bad? Like you're going to have to be able to work on that and find something that works for everybody. But I give him a lot of credit for putting together his arguably his best year in his walk year. Mm-hmm. That's what when you're about to hit free agency, that's what you want. And that can be kind of a distraction, but he hasn't let it.
Right. So the next thing, because you're looking like, okay, how much money and such. And I know there's market values. I think I saw in Spot Track was like $25 million or something like that. 7 years, $25 million per year. How much does the fact that potentially you look at their young pitching staff in the next few years where maybe they're getting bargains based off of that? I mean, assuming Robert Gasser comes back and pitches kind of what we saw, we're seeing the emergence of Tobias Myers. DL Hall, if he can transition to that. I know Jacob Mizorowski is, AAA and making that push there. And Aaron Ashby, I think, is kind of an unknown now, it seems like, at this point. Right. But it seems like younger options at the pitching department. How much does that help? Maybe knowing it's almost kind of like Green Bay in a sense, cheap wide receivers, expensive quarterback now, right, sort of thing. Does that factor into it a little bit?
But you also got to remember you're going to have Yelich, who's making a pretty penny.
Yep.
You got
to sign Contreras.
And Contreras is still under team control for a while yet, so it's not like he's a free agent. But at some point you might extend him just to give you that cost certainty of knowing this is hey, this is specifically because remember with arbitration it can fluctuate.
Right.
It's like buying a stock. You could extend him right now, and for sure what the price is.
Mm-hmm.
He could go out next year and have an even better season. His arbitration number would be higher, or he could not have as good of a season. The arbitration number might be lower.
Right.
So it's just going to come down to bottom line what the Brewers want to spend.
Yeah.
And that's something we talk about all the time when it comes to these things. Like ultimately, what are you going to be willing to spend to help kind of keep these cornerstone pieces together?
Yeah. It's going to be kind of fascinating to watch.
It is.
Isn't it? I feel like it's not going to happen.
I would agree.
Price?
I would agree. I think Willie Adames really wants to stay.
Mm-hmm.
But at some point, too, he's also got to make sure he's set. And people are going to say, well, what's the difference between $100 million and $175 million? It's $75 million.
Yeah.
Like, I would love, I love what I'm doing, too. But if somebody offered me nearly double what I was being paid to do it somewhere else, I would have to very seriously consider it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no doubt about it. So I feel like Willie Adames, there's been this perception from fans, it's almost been a 180 compared to last year. Last year he was like kind of a lightning rod, where there was some frustration, and I think a lot of it was just from the offensive side.
Right. You look at his numbers last year. He had 217, 310 on base. The advanced numbers say he was below average offensively. His defense carried him last year.
Mm-hmm.
He had the home runs. He had 24 home runs, but just it seemed like it was much more of kind of an all or nothing approach.
Right.
And think of it that way. Doing that in 28 fewer games, he's only 3 homers behind what he did last year.
Right. So, and now it's like it's kind of changed the narrative a little bit of now I think a lot of people would love to keep Willie Adames. But I don't know if it's going to work numbers-wise, especially if Mark gets sued and loses that lawsuit right now.
He's going to have to find a lot of sand.
Yeah, go to Lake Michigan, man. Get the sand over there and haul it or something. Golly.
What a story.
Right?
What a weird story.
Oh, my God.
That's funny because, like, obviously, there's a lot of Brewers fans who expect more out of Mark Ananasio.
Mm-hmm.
That's not going to help in the court of public opinion.
No. It was like the same time, was it during the lockout where it was like the Jackie Robinson?
Like the memorabilia, like, because he'd spent a pretty penny on him.
Yep. Yeah.
And then even now with buying into the Premier League team.
Yeah.
It's just, even if those things aren't necessarily connected to the Brewers, because ideally, I'm sure, obviously, the Brewers are kind of operating within their own ecosystem of this is the money we make, this is the money we spend. That's how business works.
Mm-hmm.
But still, you have Brewers fans that are going to be out there saying, "But you're a millionaire. You could still."
And I believe he was a part of the group too with that whole Live and PGA Tour, the PGA Tour one funding that too.
So like a lot of millionaires. Remember, he's a millionaire, not a millionaire, but like a lot of millionaires, he kind of has. He has his fingers in a bunch of different things. It's not like he just has the one thing he does, and that's it. Right.
Yep. So, man, talk about another guy where perception has changed quite a bit.
Sure.
Over the long haul. So, what are you going to do though, right?
Yep.
What are you going to do? So, Brewers, Guardians, 3-game series. I'm excited for this one. I agree. I think this is the matchup of the two manager of the years. I mean, if anybody else votes for somebody other than Pat Murphy in the National League, considering everything going on.
No offense to Rob Thompson or I guess at this point maybe Dave Roberts, but even like looking at the other teams in the playoff race, it's the Padres. Right. It's the Diamondbacks who won the World Series last year, and it's the Braves. And look, Brian Snitker has done a good job of kind of keeping them afloat with all the injuries they've had. But generally, that award goes to kind of the team that you kind of figured like overachieved. Like last year, it went to Skip Schumacher, the Marlins.
Yeah, yep. Because
they made the playoffs when nobody expected them, and look where they are now.
Right.
But this would be the year where, like, assuming assuming the Brewers obviously don't fade big time down the stretch or whatever. But like, if it wasn't, to me, it's not like there's another great option. The Marlins one I can understand because the Brewers were kind of expected to be where they were last year. The Marlins weren't. Mm-hmm. That's right or wrong. That's the guidelines that it comes down to a lot of times when people vote for Manager of the Year. It's which team overachieved.
Yep.
And I think you can make that case to the Brewers, given the offseason narratives, more so than the Phillies or the Dodgers or the Padres or the Diamondbacks or the Braves or whoever else.
Right. World Series preview perhaps tonight.
I would love that World Series. I don't know if Major League Baseball would.
No.
I would.
Part of me, I would love it, but part of me would also be like, oh.
Someone's got to lose.
Yeah. So it's like, crap.
Yeah.
But, I mean, we will just call it what it is. It's the Bob Uecker World Series or the Harry Doyle World Series.
Could you find a way to throw the first pitch in both stadiums?
That would be awesome.
But
he'd have to be introduced as Harry Doyle in Cleveland, even though that it was filmed.
The first one was. It was filmed at County Stadium.
Yeah. So, but still, it would be pretty darn cool. But nonetheless, how big of a start is this for Aaron Savali? Had a nice start, his previous starts. Kind of we talked about. He's like, okay, we got to start to see something.
Yeah, he got some early run support and was able to just pitch confident. And I think he just had like the one bad inning. But yeah, no, this is big. I mean, for him, every one of these is going to be. Mm-hmm. Because he's just one of those guys that's not on as firm of ground as Colin Ray or Tobias Myers. And I mean, I'd even say Freddie Peralta. Obviously, Freddie Peralta hasn't pitched to the expectations a lot of us have had for him. But if the playoffs started right now, he's still in that rotation.
Exactly. It's him, it's Ray, it's Tobias as your top three, right?
And then maybe that fourth one, this is where you're looking to see if somebody, be it Montas or Savali or somebody else.
Dale Hall.
Yeah, if somebody can kind of firm their footing for that, because you only need 4 for the start. Or do they decide that's a
combo sort of thing?
Yeah, is that a where you bring Joe Ross a time through, and then you come out with D.L. Hall, and the next time through. Do you just kind of try to Frankenstein a pitcher for that day?
Right.
Man, the Brewers have done it in the past.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of pitching, it sure seems like Trevor McGill had a good rehab outing with the Timber Rattlers. You look at what Devin Williams has done in the last 2 games.
Right. Trevor McGill, when he comes back, he'll be the 8th inning guy. That's fine.
And it's finally kind of setting up to that now.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Devin closing, Trevor McGill 8th.
Brian Hudson is kind of that fireman that you can deploy wherever.
The early version of Josh Hader sort of thing, where you can
how
give him a couple
how he
innings.
was utilized. Yes, I always struggle to just say, well, he's going to be Josh Hader because obviously Josh Hader is an anomaly.
Right.
But like in that way,
Yeah, like you can give you 2 innings or something.
Yoel Payamps has been better. Like he's been pretty good here recently, so you feel a little bit better about that. Yeah, and
you got Koenig and Wilson still in the bullpen. It can give you a couple innings. So, yeah,
Right.
it's finally going to kind of set up to what Pat Murphy's wanted for a long time.
I just knocked on wood.
Wood. So,
and I'm sure the Brewers too are very excited to get to September 1st because remember rosters expand to 28.
Yep.
So you'll add a pitcher and a hitter.
Yep.
I'm kind of curious to see what they do the next few weeks because and I will give them credit. They've given Tyler Black a chance this week, and I think if you're going to bring a guy like that up, you have to because he has nothing left to prove at AAA. But and he played some outfield in AAA. This last time he went down, he played all around the diamond. If they're looking for him for that, otherwise I'm wondering, like, given they only really have 3 outfielders right now, if it's a time, well, I guess you can play Jake Bauers out there, but you don't really want to.
Yeah.
If it might be sometime here sooner than later, you give a chance to someone like Brewer Hicklin, who was added to the 40-man roster a little bit earlier on this year. I think in part because he had an opt-out. But he has been their best offensive player at AAA. He's had and he's a bit of an older player. He was like mid to upper 20s-ish, so he's not a prospect, but like he's a right-handed hitter, so maybe he's someone that you can bring up at some point and play against some lefties because you've got 2 lefties out there with Garrett Mitchell and Sal Frelick, and maybe you don't want to.
And Blake's a switch.
And he's out right now. So I mean, I'm sure a lot of that just depends on how long Blake Perkins is out.
Right.
If Blake Perkins could be back in a week, well then maybe they don't worry about that.
Pitcher-wise, I'll give you 2 names. Again, I haven't heard a whole lot about Aaron Ashby.
I know he had a relief appearance a couple days ago that went okay, but it's been a struggle for him.
Yeah, and then is it possible with Jacob Mizrowski?
Possible. I think the guy though that you might have to keep an eye out for come September is a young pitcher by the name of Craig Yoho.
Okay.
If you look at his numbers in the minors, and people have really started to jump on this because his numbers are so crazy. Like he is honestly putting together a better potential track record for making it his way up here than Jacob Mizrowski is.
Okay.
I'm trying to do this on the fly because I don't know this just off the top of my head.
What? How dare you?
I know. I know. But, all right, this is courtesy of Codified Baseball. He's a converted position player. He's faced 182 minor league batters this year. He's allowed 4 earned runs, which is a .79 ERA, and he struck out 87 of the 192 batters he's faced.
Wow. That's pretty impressive.
He doesn't. And the thing that's crazy, and as of 2 days ago, he's only been in AAA for a couple appearances. He's faced 6 batters. He struck out 4 of them.
Okay. And
he doesn't throw super hard. He has, and I hate to put it in this category, but the advanced, like the StatCast numbers bear it out. He has a changeup a bit like Devin Williams.
Okay.
Where he doesn't throw super hard. I think Devin Williams throws harder than Craig Yoho does.
Mm-hmm.
But there's just a ridiculous amount of movement to it. Like it looks like a curveball.
Airbender 2.0?
Kind of, but like, yeah, he's got a 47% strikeout percentage in the minors this year. Nearly half and that kind of goes with the numbers I said. Nearly half the batters he's faced, he struck out. Yeah.
Interesting.
He might, and he's lower to mid-90s with his fastball, but like, he has been someone that the Brewers have they saw something that they wanted to do with, and it's worked. Mm-hmm. So he's someone that, honestly, I think he might be a little bit more of a possibility because I think Mizrowski is going to be on a pitch or an innings limit. Yeah. And they're moving him to the bullpen, doing shorter bursts now, and in part because maybe they think it could be majors. But like, I don't know if Yoho is definitely on that. Mm-hmm. So he might be the guy to look out for once we get a little bit later on if they want to try something with somebody.
Interesting. All right. Good names to watch there for sure. All right, that's going to do it for us on this episode of the Man Cave Podcast, brought to you by our good friends from Hy-Vee and Toyson Ford. Also, don't forget to check out that Swag Cave done by Resonance Branding Company. The link is in the podcast description. Till next time, I'm Dan Casper, and I will talk to you on the next episode of the Man Cave Podcast.